Something really bugged me building this PC. Wouldn't it have been so much cooler if they did this case in like a real teeny tiny size? So think like this kind of style, but shrunk down to a fractal terror size case. I think that would sell like hotcakes. But look, we can't deny the spectacle we've managed to construct here. The Height Y60 is a couple of years old now, but it still looks classy. I'd actually say better than the Height Y70. I don't like the LCD screen on the Y70, and I'd actually take today's build in a heartbeat. That said, is it worth spending all this cashola on aesthetics? If I were to reconfigure this build with less flashy stuff, we'd easily be able to get a 4080 Super graphics card inside here instead. I did offer that to the customer who spec'd out this PC. There are those of you in the comments who say that this was a complete waste of money, etc, etc, but I actually disagree. Enjoyment of your PC is the end goal. So if that means performance above all else, then great, go ahead, do it. But if the looks and style of your PC are very important to you, that's not wrong, it's just a preference. Don't feel shamed by other people questioning your choices. If you wanted to get really philosophical with it, I'd say that when you buy or build your PC, it's less about the PC itself, but more about how it actually makes you feel, how you enjoy it, and the pleasure of owning it. And I know I, as much as anyone, have been guilty of slagging off Zotac, but they seem to have sorted things out this generation. The parts look nice, they aren't too loud, they're not too hot. Temperatures are on par with Gigabyte models that I've used in this performance bracket. For this particular build, it might have been nice to have some lighting on the fans themselves. That said, most people will have this card horizontal in most builds, but how much that's going to matter to you, it's going to depend on a case-by-case basis, but in this vertically mounted orientation, yep, it would have looked better if we had a card that had RGB on the fans. Strimer cables, they're a bit Marmite. You either love them or you hate them. Personally, I prefer just regular old custom sleeve cables. The internet at large does seem to love the Strimers though, so again, that is a preference. And some of you might be concerned that we're on an Intel platform. You know, what with all the news about chip degradation, which from what I can see is due to overvolting. I prefer my CPUs to run at locked settings rather than these boost algorithms, particularly on Intel. But as long as you use the Intel default power settings, you probably aren't going to have any problems. CPUs don't really like being over 1.45 volts, and that's at a push, which the default settings, they shouldn't take you that far. There are new BIOS updates out now, and that's going to ensure that this knowledge is reflected in the stock settings. You could also get the KF version of this CPU, which would save you a few quid. You're going to lose the integrated graphics if you do that. And my general rule is that if you can get the regular K version for 10% more than the KF, then it's probably worth it. If your graphics card dies, you're still going to be able to use the PC for work or productivity or just keeping your life on track. And as always, you do have the option to go with AMD Ryzen. And that would be my preference right now. I don't have any moral or financial allegiance either way, it's all the same to me. But the Ryzens do have a much better upgrade path at the moment, which is better for your longevity. In any case, the 13700K we used here, it's going to provide really zippy performance. It's going to be more than enough for 95% of users. I think online we always look at the Halo products, the best ones, to determine what's going to be the best thing for you. But really, at the end of the day, guys, these are all really high-end stuff, whether you go Intel, AMD. They're all going to be really fast. I do find Intel systems are a bit snappier when you're doing sort of standard Windows tasks compared to the Ryzen. I just find they're that little bit snappier. But the downside, of course, being the really high power draw and then the heat dumping into your room that comes out as a consequence. Keeping the i7 cool is the Thermalright Frozen Knot 360mm liquid cooler. And this is an absolute gem. It looks mint, it kept the 13700K nice and cool in gaming, and came in at a stupidly good price. The Height Y60 case is by all accounts an absolute showstopper. It was an instant hit when it came out, and it still feels modern after a couple of years of being released. It's spacious, it has fantastic build quality, and it's got bags of room for whatever components you decide to put in it in future. There's not going to be any hardware restrictions realistically inside this case. So with the build complete, it's time to reflect. What could we have changed in this build to make it better? We had a good discussion earlier about the preferences of looks versus performance, and having watched this video, have you maybe changed your mind about that? You can tell me down in the comments. I think this build might have looked better with ring light RGB fans and with a graphics card that has RGB elements on the fans themselves like we talked about earlier. I would have ditched the Strimer cables, and that would give us enough money to justify any additional upgrades that we've talked about. You could even stretch to a Radeon 7900 XTX or maybe a 4080 if you catch a nice deal. You could also save a lot of money by going with a case like the Phanteks NV5 or the recent Antec C3 ARGB that we reviewed on the channel. And those are going to give a similar-ish look, but at about half the price. But that's going to be, again, a personal preference. Now that is actually the end of the video, but I've got a quick thing to say for all the subscriber guys. So if you don't care about that, you can and then we can actually talk about what we want to talk about. I want to try a new thing on the channel. I want to talk about the business aspects of PC building and business in general. And I'm going to plan to release that aspect a little bit of time after the build videos, maybe a few days, to give us a bit of a different angle, taking you behind the curtain of PC retail and sales and things like that. So keep an eye out for that when it comes out.